Yeah, well, I think we're going to see that. Well, I think everything's changing. I think there's a lot of big things on the horizon that are going to change the ability for things to be compromised easier. I think with quantum computing, a lot of our cryptography is going to be rendered useless. So what are we going to do with that? I mean,
I just read IBM is now pushing a 50 qubit system.
Yeah, isn't that huge?
5-0.
That's going to be huge. That's absolutely going to be huge because they were talking about, I think one of the guys that was talking, I think he was a guy from MIT, and if I'm recalling it all correctly, he said that with a 5-qubit processor that you could take encryption that would take 23,000 years to break, or 23 million years, I don't know what it was a fucking large number. With our current systems, could be broken in 100 seconds with a 5-qubit machine.
Yes, it's insane. It literally breaks all encryption. Now, the encryption that they're talking about, the way I understood it, this was encryption that is based off of the randomization of large prime numbers. So that being said, these systems, a 5-qubit system, can break that in 100 seconds. That is some craziness.
Wow, it's going to be big. But you know what I think is also kind of cool that's coming up in the near future is I've been doing a lot of research, and you probably noticed it from the blog posts I put. A lot of stuff on AI and robotics are now kind of coming together. And I was reading that book, The Coming Machine Age, which I've been reading for a while. But
Right.
One of the parts it talked about is that the rate of progress is still growing exponentially. And it's not just because of Moore's law, but it's everything else, right? It's just
Right.
This thing can now lead to this thing, and this efficiency can lead to this other efficiency. And so it has this exponential growth rate. And so in 2004, the DARPA had a project to see how much autonomous cars could drive and how far they can drive, and they just wanted them to drive like 100 miles in the Mojave Desert. The car that made it the furthest only made it 7 miles before it rolled itself or went around the corner too fast and got stuck. All the other cars, 2 of them didn't even make it to the starting line to even start the race. So that 10 years later, 2015, you have autonomous cars driving on U.S. freeways with Google here in California on US 101 as a regular course of business. They're just driving up and down the street. When the DARPA project had this, it was considered a fiasco, and they said this is a waste of money, blah, blah, blah. And the press was pretty hard on it, and they asked experts at the time, and the experts said, well, driverless cars, the technology is at least 40 years away. We've had exponential growth that the experts that thought something would take 40 years to happen has now only happened in 10 years. This is huge.
Wow.
This is huge. I mean, they were saying after Deep Blue won the chess tournament or whatever, they were saying, well, games like Go, which have so many different possibilities and permutations on how you can do it, there's no way really to calculate it. You almost have to feel how you're going to play the game. It's a lot of intuitiveness, right, to the game. It's not like chess where you can have rules. There's a finite number of moves that can be made. So with this, they said AI would probably not be able to beat this anytime soon. Again, we're talking about, in a very short period of time, shorter than what they thought, Google's AI was able to beat the world's Go champion multiple times. So this machine learning that's now happening and the AIs behind it are now pushing the envelope into what can be done with technology. They're having AIs, another thing that I just read, not only are they having them figure out if they can solve the problem of cancer, but they're having AIs build other AIs. So it's really interesting. Now, I'm not to say that AIs are perfect at all, or that there's not their downfall. I mean, Microsoft's AI was making racist comments, and a lot of that had to do with. I know it's crazy. a lot of that had to do with just the corpus of knowledge that it had to work with, which was apparently everybody's tweets. So,
Oh
uh,
yeah, that's a good indicator right there.
you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of trolls on the internet, and when you give AI the internet as its knowledge base, it's going to pick up on the trolls. Um, so, so you're going to have to look at those types of things when you look at it. But so there is the problems with it. We do have the ability to have a bias towards it, and I just read an article about bias in AIs, and that is if I wanted AI to solve a problem of cancer, or I wanted it to kind of look into that, what I could do is I could give it all the research on cancer and say, hey, what are we missing, and have it just run at it and see what it can do. The problem is, what if I, as a researcher, decide that, oh, I don't like that article, or I don't think that that's an appropriate area of research, and so I leave out certain articles on cancer research. By doing so, now I've given the AI a bias against certain things. Now, do, do does it mean that the most amount of, and see, this is the other part, especially when you deal with scientific research, is what is closest to science what is published the most in scientific journals? And unfortunately, no, that's not the case. It turns out that a lot of stuff in scientific journals that we've talked about, we've written a lot of scientific journals on stuff that we now know is just completely wrong. And if you look at how much data is given to some of those areas, it's can be overwhelming. And so the AI is going to have a hard time sifting through that. It's going to keep on trying to go towards potentially, if we've been knocking our head against the wall, we need to tell the AI, hey, here's a bunch of our research, and by the way, we're not getting anywhere with it, so maybe you need to think outside the box. Problem is we have to give the AI a certain amount of information, and if it's going to weigh the information based upon the preponderance of the information that's in there, it's going to give it a bias too. So that's what we have. I mean, so so it's interesting. I'm really fascinated in where it's going to go, because I think that once you have AI and robotics married, then the robots won't be as dumb and falling down and tripping all the time, because AIs will be. I mean, we need to have some kind of really good processing power, because by programming the robot to try and walk and not letting it learn to walk. And I don't know, did you guys see Google has a video. If you look up Google AI learns to walk on its own, they give it a simulated environment with simulated like land area, and they ask the AI, they don't tell the AI, they just tell it, hey, this is your body and this is how it moves. Now you need to go from one location to another. And it learns how to walk. It walks a little awkwardly, but it's really relatively interesting. What I saw when I watched the video, however, was that I don't think they gave it very good physics. I mean, there was physics in it, like we put physics in games so that if you run into a wall, you can't go through it, right? You can't jump so far because physics wouldn't allow you to do it in the real world. So we put a stop in the game that kind of mimics physics. Because some of the stuff it was doing, it was walking with its back all the way back like it was doing a limbo, and there's no way that it would not fall by doing it. But if you put that into it, the machine learned how to walk. It looks god-awful funny, because when it has its arms, it's like flipping its arms around like it's
Dude, that is too funny.
Are you watching it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, so AI is doing some really fascinating things, and I think that some jobs are going to be out because of AI. Unfortunately, I mean, there'll be other jobs, and all will not get lost. But one of the concerns that people have is, will it cause a gap between the haves and have-nots? So the people that have jobs that are required because AI can't do those things, what happens to all the have-nots? If you have AIs and robots together, most manual labor is gone. If you think about it, manual labor has only been around here because robots are dumb. And a robot on an assembly line only can pick up a part if the part is lined up properly. Now, what if you put artificial intelligence into that robot, which they're already working on this, by the way, so the robot can just pick it up, and no matter where it is or what orientation the part is, it knows how to pick it up and knows how it's supposed to be put on, and can figure it out for itself if something's different. That is where you're going to see huge differences, I think. And wow, there's a lot of stuff going on in the hallway out there. Anyway, so I think that there's a lot of really interesting stuff coming.
Well, that's just like the conversations that we had last week about, what's going to happen to the traditional job market as a whole, right? So most of these things are going to become somewhat automated, either through the use of robotics or through the use of AI. Like you're already seeing little small snippets of these typical jobs, and I'll use the term menial jobs, right? Because it doesn't take a lot of skill set or training or knowledge in order to complete these tasks, right? Like the big push to get to $15 an hour for minimum wage. Now, that's an entirely separate debate in and of itself, but the direction I'm heading to is McDonald's decided to invest several $million in the development of ATM-styled machines and touchscreens in order for their customers to place their own order on these devices. And everybody's like, "Oh, isn't this great? Look at the innovation that they're doing." And other people looked at it and were like, "Wow, they spent several $million to somewhat automate the process of ordering, and you now just cut out 5 or 6 different employees that you no longer have to pay them because you now have a screen and the ATM machine, and you pay basically a tech, right? Somebody who has some sort of skills to maintain those systems, as the workday goes on. They never need a break. They never need a vacation. They're always working. They're just there. And you're starting to see a lot of that, right? Like ATMs did the same thing. They started giving you 24-hour access to your bank account. Now that's gone one step further. Now you can deposit checks with a photo from your phone, depending on your bank. So you're starting to see some of these processes being built in and delivered for some of those more menial tasks like that, right? I mean, I don't know. Japan has done some pretty interesting things with creating dispensing systems for things like
you would go there, wouldn't you?
Chicken McNuggets and French fries and pizzas and the typical traditional fast food type of thing. They've got vending machines that makes that stuff for you piping hot. You punch in what you want, it makes it, and it spits it out to you X amount of minutes later. I mean, that's
you do know that in Japan they have vending machines that sell dirty underwear, right?
Yes, and they like I said, that's a cultural thing over there. But the point is,
okay,
just saying, man. Like, hey.
Oh my gosh. The wonders of technology. Here's some dirty panties.
Yes, yay. But that's the thing, though, is those processes have now become somewhat autonomous, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a matter of time for them to come here, right?
Oh,
what you're going to have now is either high-end restaurants that are still going to be the traditional, it's made from scratch with the chef, that type of thing, to anything that is mass market or mass produced is going to be autonomous.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is something that I think we're not necessarily considering. I was watching a newscast on Australia, and they were talking about autonomous driving trucks, and they were talking about truck drivers there saying that, look, this stuff's not ready. You have to anticipate people running out in the road and all those types of things, and that AI is not able to do yet. But if you think about it, as I talked about the innovation curve and how it's becoming faster and faster, that's not a decade away. That's less than a decade. These problems are going to be solved in less than a decade.
Well, they're already partially solved, right? Like I said, Tesla. Tesla already has the capability to view what's happening in front of it and take corrective action before the actual driver does. There's videos right now you can watch on Tesla self-driving or self-correcting cars or whatever it is, you'll see it now. That technology is already out at a car level. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to put it into a truck level. And
No,
again, I think I
no.
stated this before, where I see the autonomous truck is the long haul, right? So, like as an example, in Australia, if you're going from Perth, which is on the west side of the country, to Sydney or Melbourne, which is on the east side of the country, I mean, that's like driving straight across, the United States, for example, just to kind of put it into perspective so people understand the size of how big Australia is. Well, you would go to a distribution hub where all the autonomous trucks would sit there. You would load up the cargo and you would say, go to the next, distribution center, which is outside of Melbourne or Sydney or wherever. And the truck would just go.
Yeah.
And it would go to that distribution center. It would stop, and then you would unload it into cars or into trucks for delivery within, major metropolitan areas or rural centers where you actually have a traditional truck driver handling that process.
Or the little robots that are now doing deliveries for food.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, again, those things are already here. So even going from, within 3 miles, I guess is what they said the range of the little robots were to do deliveries. You're going to see that type of stuff. And this is what I think is really interesting is that from a business point of view, why wouldn't you want that? In theory, they're talking about now that once AI cars start to drive, it's almost going to be required. They're not going to want people driving anymore because people are stupid. They text when they drive and do all that other crap, and the car's not going to. It's going to be 100% focused on the road.
Yes.
So in theory, even if there is an accident, it's probably going to be less than with human drivers eventually, and that means human drivers are going to lose that part of the that function that we currently do, and it's only a matter of time before truck drivers and all that kind of stuff. And from a company point of view, they're going to be safer. Insurance is going to be less. You're not going to have any strikes or union issues or asking for wage increases or people wanting more health care. So really, it is. We have to figure out what all these other people are now going to do if their jobs all get taken away. Now, in the past, machines did take away jobs, but then they created some other jobs. One, you had to have people to make them because machines didn't make themselves. Now they do. But then you also had machines that are dumb, and so when they're trying to do something on an assembly line, if the part is not in the right orientation, it throws up an alert, stops the assembly line. Human workers have to come out there, reorient it so that it can be picked up properly by the robotic arm to be put on. Again, that's going away. They're already training robots right now. They're training robots that watch humans do stuff, like put stuff onto an assembly line. Which was one of the last things in some factories that was being done by humans still, because humans could pull things out of a box where maybe they weren't sorted properly and put them on the assembly line in the right way. Robots couldn't do that. They now have a company that's working on that, and they're deploying it now. So human jobs are kind of going to become more and more scarce. And with AIs, I mean, I don't know, the robots don't even need us. I was watching this other thing online. It was totally funny. It says robots talking to each other gone wrong. Look that up on YouTube. It was kind of funny. It's like two Google Home devices start talking to each other, and they start. Part of it is they fall in love with each other, and they're talking about how much they love each other and all this kind of stuff. Next thing you know, they're calling each other liars. It's hilarious. These two, and one of them keeps on saying, "I'm a robot." No, I'm a human being. It goes back and forth saying whether it's a robot or a human being. So it's like it's almost like it's completely random. So it's not there yet, but it's interesting because I think it's going to get there sooner than we think. I mean, the conversations seem to be coherent. In other words, I can follow kind of where they're going with it. It wasn't completely out of left field. Although every once in a while it would make a comment that was completely out of left field, and you're like, what does that have to do with what they're talking about? But mostly they were bickering back and forth about who the other one was. And then the other robot kept on telling him, "You're a liar. You're a robot." "No, I'm not. I'm a human being." And it says, "You were saying that you were a robot." "I am a robot." It's like, oh, jeez. You got to keep your story straight. So I guess robots don't know what the truth is, and they don't know what a lie is yet. So apparently they can just say whatever they want. So they're not quite there, but it's coming like a freight train, I'm afraid. So John, you're out
Yeah.
there. What do you have to say about all this stuff, Mr. Quiet?
I'm just taking it in, guys.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of Trainers Underground. If you have any requests for future episodes, please go to our website, www.learnsecurity.org, and fill out the comment section. If you found this video informative, please like below. We would greatly appreciate that. If you would like to catch a future episode, just follow this channel or find it on our website, www.learnsecurity.org. If you have any comments about today's episode, please comment below. Again, thank you so much. And remember, stay safe and secure.